Content presented in Cheshire Corners is for educational and informational purposes only. Please consult a legal professional if you have any questions or concerns about the content of this disclaimer, this series, or the legal implications surrounding psychedelic substances in your jurisdiction.
We got licensed on March 31st, but then we couldn't really open until we had licensed medicine, right? And so that didn't happen until June 3rd. But then by June 6th, we had such a long waiting list. We've been holding services ever since then, and we just passed 65 sessions.
And those algorithms are shutting down social media accounts in the space. Anyone have that problem or know someone who's had that problem? I'd be surprised if I don't see all the hands. So it's a big deal. Anyone from small nonprofits to big for-profits. Psychedelic Science's account was shut down 3 weeks before Psychedelic Science. So it's a big deal.
First and foremost is it's usually a group of passionate individuals who are exceptional at their craft. They're really good at their work. And so in the cannabis space, you can imagine like a third-generation farmer. Here, you can imagine folks who have been serving these communities and the population more broadly in the underground for a really long time.
Welcome to Cheshire Corners. I'm the AI clone of Rita Tsalyuk, and I will be your host as we trip through the looking glass. This legal and business panel examines the rapidly evolving business landscape of psychedelics, from service centers and training programs to advocacy and investment. Panelists will discuss current regulations, market dynamics, and ethical considerations shaping this emerging field, offering insight into where opportunity meets responsibility. Niko Skievaski from Althea Moderate's panelists, Elizabeth Cooke from the Center Origin, Greg Shanken from Higher Frequency and Gloss, Matt Grimes from the National Psychedelic Association, and Martha Hammel from the Aspen Psychedelic Resource Center from Collaborants Conference 2025.
So my name is Niko Skievaski, and I'm a co-founder of Althea. And I'm so honored to be moderating this panel because I'm an entrepreneur. I work in the business world. I've raised lots of money from venture capital. And I've also felt the profound psychedelic epiphanies of oneness, of love, of unity, of abundance. And in the legal and business world, we get the opportunity to try to take that mindset of psychedelic healing and jam it into American capitalism. And that's what we got to talk about today, is how the heck how do we do that? How is that going? Along with that, we have amazing panelists here. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because I'm inevitably going to miss some of their credentials or some of the organizations they represent. But I want to do it with an icebreaker because I like icebreakers. So the first question you'll answer is, who are you? Why are you here? Number 2 is, what's your favorite fall activity? And number 3, and so we're going to start with Martha. Number 3 is, Oregon and Colorado are quite unique, and we have a new regulatory structure. And Martha, if you could give us an overview of how those structures work to give a lay of the land.
So I'm enjoying this memory test late in the day after lunch. Let's see if I can introduce myself and then remember the 2 other questions.
I'm happy to, that's what my job as moderator, yeah.
Okay, I'm Martha Hammel. I do so many different things in the space. I am the executive director of the Aspen Psychedelic Resource Center. I work with the National Psychedelic Association. I consult with Delphi Circle and Castro Consulting. I'm here at this conference representing the Open Psychedelic Evaluation Nexus, which is a research study looking into the efficacy of psilocybin, clinical psilocybin use. My favorite fall activity is hiking and hot springing and enjoying the mountains. And the difference between Oregon and Colorado, or like the structure.
And just an overview of how these programs work. You know, at the level of knowledge for this audience who's pretty knowledgeable already, but just to give us a foundation.
Yeah. There's so much to say here. So in Oregon, there are clinical psilocybin service centers that are open. You can go and receive psilocybin therapy at these centers. In Colorado, the Natural Medicine Health Act did two things. So it decriminalized psychedelics. So we have personal use. Any adult over 21 in Colorado can cultivate, consume, gift, and guide in a bona fide religious ceremonial use. And then we also have psilocybin service centers where you can go in and receive treatment from a facilitator that's been licensed by the state.
Amazing, thank you. I'm going to direct the next question at Elizabeth, so go a little out of order here. Elizabeth opened the very first healing center in Colorado. Groundbreaking, a pioneer. And so Elizabeth, I would love you to give your intro of who you are, a little bit of background. What is your favorite fall activity? And give us a sense of how it's going. We were talking a little bit earlier about, some of the things you're seeing and excitement and challenges. Just give us a sense of what's going on at the Center of Origin.
So my name is Elizabeth Cooke. It's a pleasure to be here today. And as Niko said, yes, we were the first licensed in the state of Colorado, so I'm really excited about that. And then also in the city of Denver, so we've got dual licensure, and so I was really happy. We got licensed on March 31st, but then we couldn't really open until we had licensed medicine, right? And so that didn't happen until June 3rd, but then by June 6th, we had such a long waiting list. We've been holding services ever since then, and we just passed 65 sessions. So I'm really excited. Yeah, so it's been going really, really well. Yeah. And my favorite fall activity is walking in Central Park. So Colorado's good too, but Central Park is very nice.
Are you talking about New York?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I was like, that's a Denver answer.
I know.
Awesome.
So the mountains are good.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm so excited to hear more about Center of Origin as we get into this and your experiences. But let's, for Matt, the next question here. Matt, I'm interested who you are and why you're up here. I'm also interested in your favorite fall activities. But most of all, I'm interested in what you're seeing from a perspective at the National Psychedelic Association around some of the biggest challenges that the businesses in this licensed space are facing. And some of the barriers in, as I mentioned earlier, cramming psychedelic healing into capitalism.
Sure. Oh, gosh. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here again at this panel late in the day. Thank you to all the organizers who put this on simultaneously in 2 cities this weekend. My name is Matt Grimes. I am an attorney by trade. I've worked exclusively in the Schedule I medicine space since 2017. First, through a lot of cannabis work, I played a role in helping Illinois transition over to adult use. And then for the last several years now in psychedelics. I work with the National Psychedelics Association. I'll be able to tell you a little bit more about that maybe later in this talk. I'm also a founding member of this thing called the Psychedelic Bar Association, where I'm a co-steward of the Business Forms and Practices Committee. I'm a part of this thing called the Americans For Ibogaine Project. You might have seen some news out of Texas here recently. That blueprint, that model there is just crazy enough to work. We are using opioid settlement funds. And, the old adage about politics making strange bedfellows. Well, a bunch of us got together to kick this thing off in Aspen this past spring. And there were elected officials from, I think, 14 different states in that room, the majority of whom hailed from what we would identify as deep red states. And so just an interesting folding together of worlds, but also those states are the ones that are, by and large, disproportionately impacted by the opioid scourge. And so it makes sense that we're all in this room trying to solve for this together. I'm a vice chair of the American Bar Association's Cannabis Law and Policy Committee. I served a group named the National Cannabis Industry Association for a long time. And the why, though, why I'm up here. Yes, I do all of these things with all of these organizations. But for me, like cannabis was always, I got to see cannabis work in a very personal way as medicine. And I mean, I've had a long relationship with that plant. We worked together to put me through undergrad. And so we've known each other for a long time. And to see her work as medicine, really just, there was a shift in perspective for me. And so there was a catalyst in my life where I just dropped everything that I was doing and started working for that plant. And in these spaces, I feel like there's a larger inflection point available for healing, at the ending of suffering. And so it's very easy to dedicate all of my time and energy to something I care so deeply about. Favorite fall activity is got to be hiking in the mountains, although walk in Central Park is also nice. And then the challenges the businesses are facing, gosh, chronologically or alphabetically, they are, license fees are expensive. Having, just banking services, merchant services, where you can take credit cards. Lease negotiations, if you're trying to lease a space. And then, a lot of insurance considerations. And so we'll get to some of that, I think, in more detail here later in this panel. But thank you, Niko.
Thank you, Matt. And last but not least, Greg. Greg, you help a lot of people with marketing. It's a challenge that these businesses have as well. And so I would like to know about who you are and your favorite fall activity, but also what are some of the, in my mindset, Colorado and Oregon are the only places in the country where you can kind of legally do this above board and you can market it. Why are these companies still having a challenge marketing, and why aren't there lines just around the door for these things?
Thanks, Niko. Great to be here, and thanks to all of you for hanging out with us till the end. So my name is Greg Shanken. I live in Boulder, and I am the founder of Gloss. We're a web development agency. We work with a lot of brands in the space, quite a few that are here today with web development work. And I also am finishing my training as a psilocybin facilitator through Intersect. Very excited about that. Never would have predicted that 3 years ago. It wasn't even on the radar, and as things unfolded and my own personal healing work just led me into the healing world as a healer. Kind of ironic because my parents are both retired healers, and so is my sister, and so is my wife. But for myself, it was like, no, until it was like, yeah. I also do business, web, and marketing trainings for facilitators, therapists. I offer this as free training. I have offered this to many schools because a lot of these schools are doing amazing work in training folks to become healers, but not necessarily. I just graduated, now I need a client. And I've never done that before. And the marketing, which I'll touch on in a second. So it's been a really, really amazing journey. I was also an ambassador for Prop 122. So to hear Elizabeth talking about 65 journeys as the first healing center in Colorado is amazing. And then in Oregon, 14,000 people have gone through the regulated model. So, good things are happening, and yet we have so many challenges, which is to be expected as we are pioneers in this space. As far as marketing is very, very challenging in this space for a number of reasons. Number one is that the global ad networks don't understand it. They get triggered by it. People say, oh, algorithms cause the problems. Well, how do the algorithms get into place? Humans. So humans still create algorithms. And those algorithms are shutting down social media accounts in the space. Anyone have that problem or know someone who's had that problem? I'd be surprised if I don't see all the hands. So it's a big deal. Anyone from small nonprofits to big for-profits. Psychedelic Science's account was shut down 3 weeks before Psychedelic Science. So it's a big, big deal. So that's a big problem. And I was working with clients, helping them with marketing until I started seeing how challenging it was. And so what that led me to do is take a different approach. So I've launched a private psychedelic marketing network called Higher Frequency. And basically it's a vetted private network where we will have advertisers and promoters or affiliates, and we can basically promote each other's work, and there is a financial energy exchange, but outside of the reach of global ad networks. And if you're working with a global ad network and it's working for you, keep doing it. But just know the risks. Know that it can go away at any moment because they're in control. And so the network I created is to help bring it in the family, as I like to say, because that's really what this is. We're a family, and we understand it, we get it, and now we need to, find ways to help grow and amplify our healing voices. And specifically to your question, or more specifically, I think there's a lot of issues that are, even outside of what I just named. And I think a lot of it is about awareness and education. And so there are so many people that need this healing, and people here, we're on the front lines of this. But I always talk about this, so I'll say it again. I think about personas, right? Like the soccer mom in Iowa, the military vet in Texas, and they learn about psychedelics maybe because Oprah mentioned it, and that's a good thing. But then they don't know where to go. They don't know where to get good information. And then they learn that a psilocybin healing session is $2,500, and maybe their eyes pop out. Maybe they even think that that's greedy to be required to pay that. As we know, right, for what you get, prep sessions, a 6, 7, 8 hour journey, integration sessions, if you kind of net all that out, it's about the same as what a therapist makes. But if you're uninformed, then you're going to see that price tag. And also, by the way, if you're a soccer mom in Iowa, well, I have to travel to Oregon or Colorado. Now, there might be underground places to go, but that's not going to be known to someone who just kind of learned about this from Oprah. So we have awareness, then we have education, then we have accessibility. So that's where maybe talk more in this panel about the financial side of this. So those are some of the things that are providing challenges, and some of the service centers in Oregon are unfortunately going out of business. And that's not a result of the lack of need or demand. Right? 14,000 people have gone through. How many people need this? 14 billion, right? So this is the bridge that we need to gap, or the gap that we need to bridge. That's better, sure. Right, Dan? Yeah, sure, whatever it takes. So I don't want to take the mic for too long, but these are some of the issues that we face, and this is why we have to work in community and have events like this and conversations like this. My favorite fall activity, it's going to sound so not Boulder because it's not hiking, and I like hiking. It's watching football, so that's my favorite fall activity. Don't tell anyone. Oh, I'm on camera. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you. So one of the things that you pointed out in this advertising and marketing problem is we have federal laws that conflict with our state laws, right? And we're seeing a lot of the challenges in businesses emerge because of that conflict as well. And I would like to ask Elizabeth and then Matt to share more about what can we learn from the path that the cannabis industry had laid in the decades before psilocybin. What can we learn from that, and also what's very different about it? And I ask Elizabeth first because that's a background that you came from and have a lot of experience in.
So as Niko said, I have a background also in cannabis. I started in 2010 with a medicinal marijuana dispensary, and then later in 2015 founded Coda Signature. It was a gourmet edible company. Some of you remember it. It was so good. And so I spent about 10 years in cannabis, and there's some things that are very similar, and then there's some things that are very different. And on the one hand, I mean, what's great is that Colorado basically said, okay, here is a legal structure under which you can operate in a Schedule I drug that is federally illegal, and they've given us a path to do that. And so for me, I think that's fantastic. So when I know that I can play in this square, this is where I'm going to play. And so, and there was some things that happen that you know that there's going to be some rule changes and things like that, and you anticipate that. I think that's probably what helped me get the first license in the natural medicine space, because I'd been through those kinds of applications and knew how to fill them out, and it was like sort of like been there, done that, okay, we can do this. And so it wasn't so bad. One of the things that I think is the biggest, well, as also some of the similar things is that, like you mentioned, it's the merchant financing. That's really hard. It's social media. I still have that. We'll see how long. I was just shut down by Square, and then went to a cannabis one, and then they got shut down. They themselves got shut down 2 weeks later. I was like, what? So, but then luckily Niko is saving the day, and he's coming through with an alternative, which is really fantastic. So that's very helpful. So that was good. But so a lot of the similar frustrations are there, and so you anticipate them and you keep going and you figure it out, right? Other things are very, very different because cannabis is product-based, and so supply and demand, kind of, you can say, okay, I'm gonna put these products out into market, and then you can keep going. With this, it's different. It's not product-based at all, it's service-based. And so when you think about different models or different structures, like a vertical integration model, sometimes I think maybe that's a good way to go, because then we can have our own cultivation, we can brand our own medicine. There's a kind of trustworthiness in being able to control everything through that whole process. But then I think, well, there's a lot of cultivators out there, there's not the same kind of demand. So there's a lot of ways to look at it. So services are completely different than products. So that's one of the areas where we're looking to have multiple verticals in the business, but predominantly in the service space. So obviously, of course, there's journey work, and then also microdosing as well. And we offered tier pricing for people that are coming in individually, if they're coming in with a couple or a duo, if it's group pricing. Also, we have a training program that students that have finished their classroom work can come in and do 150, or they have to do 150 hours worth of training, and then they can come in and do a practicum or a consultation with us. So that's another way we can provide a service. And then we can do lower costs if somebody wants to come in and have a student be their facilitator. So there's lots of ways that you have to be really creative about how you can keep costs low, but then also try to survive in the business too, because it is fabulously expensive. Between the insurance is ridiculous. I mean, that's really, it took about almost 4 months to negotiate the insurance that would cover all of our facilitators, because otherwise the main one that they were pushing the entire time is you can have insurance, but it's not going to cover anybody who's inebriated. Well, who needs that? I mean, so it was like really, so there's a lot of weird things like that you have to kind of push through and get through. There was something else I was going to say, and I forgot what it was, but I'm sure it'll come back to me. But anyway, I know. So with services, the state doesn't make money on services through taxes. So licensing fees are very expensive, a lot more than cannabis, way more than alcohol. And so to provide mental health, it's 40 times more expensive than a liquor license, 25 times more expensive than a cannabis license, because the state doesn't get to collect taxes, and they have to also pay their own staff, and there's a lot of compliance, and there's a lot of legal things that they have to meet. So we're trying to find, I guess, a sweet spot that where we can all sort of be comfortable and survive in. So.
Oh, geez, that stat. I hope someone wrote that down. I'm going to be repeating that. That's wild. I think you teed it up really nicely for Matt to contribute to that.
Okay.
So both on the what can we learn from cannabis, but also Elizabeth talked about insurance, and I know you got a sweet spot in your heart for that. So if you can share,
big, just enormous sweet spot.
Just an actuary right here. He just really cares.
You do one thing once in your career, and then everybody's like, "You can do that," and then you just keep doing it for them. So let's see, parallels to these two industries. I think one thing that's coming up for me, and maybe even first and foremost, is it's usually a group of passionate individuals who are exceptional at their craft. They're really good at their work. And so in the cannabis space, you can imagine like a third generation farmer. Here, you can imagine folks who have been serving these communities and in the population more broadly in the underground for a really long time. Neither sets of those folks in kind of the legacy marketplace ever had to run a business about it or pay taxes about it. And so, one way that at least the MPA is hoping to solve, we've come up with a lot of these kind of like nuts and bolts type things that are just necessary to own and operate a business. And so we do have things like banking solutions and merchant service solutions and accountants from across the spectrum. So depending on your risk tolerance and how you view 280E after they explain it to you, then you can sort of make an informed decision. And so just really empowering folks who are already fantastic at what they do through some of these just like foundational business tools. Another thing that I've noticed here in both spaces is usually companies or groups need a little bit more financial runway than they anticipate. And so go ahead and pad those months, go ahead and pad those obligations, usually by at least a quarter and more if you can find the dough. Another way that I see a parallel is the way the medicine is showing up. And that is that cannabis, like I feel like a normal, somebody should could run a consumer education campaign around how this plant really enjoys being, engaged in a full way. And so there's a zillion minor cannabinoids, and the terpene profile is maybe where the action is as far as how you feel when you engage that medicine. And also the endocannabinoid system was just discovered by science in the mid-90s. And turns out that informs every single critical system in your body. And so, a lot of the CB1 and the CB2 receptors are like lock and key in that space. And so there's a lot of, enjoying that medicine in its totality. And I think we heard from this conference, even over the weekend, that there's maybe the same thing going on in the mushroom space, where a lot of folks it's maybe easy to imagine like, hey, higher psilocybin content, like a more potent medicine. And so you kind of extract for the psilocin content. And really, the entourage effect is very real in this space as well. And so I feel like these little sentient beings like to be enjoyed in their totality. And so there's a lot, and so there's, these other compounds that ultimately matter to the experience that one receives when engaging with this medicine. And so I hope that we're early enough in this space here, this sector, this industry, whatever you like to call it, where we can start talking about this early and often, and people can realize that, hey, I don't need this massively potent mushroom. I might need a lot of grams of mushroom, but a lower psilocybin content, and to allow all of these other molecules to work together. I think that's it. We can talk about the insurance a little bit. I think that's all right. We're going to get there here in a minute anyway. And another thing, in addition to kind of like trying to offer these foundational services that are necessary, the MPA, and this has taken up a lot of my time these days, is quite literally starting an insurance company. And so I found myself out in Nevada here a handful of weeks ago, where we met with the Department of Insurance there. These are very formal, consensus reality regulators. I had to buy a suit and tie for this thing. You meet people where they are. And so I was there, and it turns out that we ended up with, after sharing our idea and talking about how we were going to go about it, now we count them as partners in this whole thing. They love the idea. They agreed in theory, and now we just have to kind of execute a plan. Additionally we just completed what's phase 1 of this 3-phase process. Phase 3 is ultimately taking applications and running an insurance company. Phase 1 was complete when we got back this all-important actuarial study so in this process, just a little context here, the MPA hired a third party. It's called a captive manager. These are JDs and MBAs who do this for their careers. And so they kind of validated the idea, hey, there's going to be enough premium dollars to support a claim if it comes through or when it comes through, because claims are going to happen here. And so, they then, to make sure that there's some transparency and an arm's length transaction, retained an actuarial firm. The actuarial firm ran the numbers and came back to us just this past week. This is kind of breaking news, at least in my life in this space. And so we're just digesting that information now, and that's going to inform the rates that we're able to charge, and overall hopefully track some investment, because we don't have all of the money that we need to accomplish this, but we do have people who are open to the idea of supporting everyone doing this work through this vehicle. And just to be abundantly clear, the insurance that I'm talking about up here is for the service and healing centers and for the facilitators. And the specific insurance, it's going to be a tower of liability that encompasses general and professional liability or malpractice insurance. We also are building in, let me say some things in here. And so we have some privileges here. This is going to operate a lot more like a real insurance policy in the medical malpractice space. We talked to the American Psychological Association early on and understood they'd done this. This thing is called an association captive model, which is just a different name for an insurance company. It's a type of insurance company. And they shared some learnings that they had. They ended up housing this thing in their C3. And so eventually the IRS came and said, hey, you're not a nonprofit, you're an insurance company. And so, lessons learned that way. It was a hard lesson, I think. It was a very taxable lesson. But here we're doing things like, just because I happen to have this experience and this is a way that I can serve this space, it's going to be first dollar defense, which means no deductible. It means coverage of up to $1 million per claim and $2 million in the aggregate, meaning you can have $2 million losses in 1 year that'll be fully covered. And we're building in things like, I don't know if we quite got this one, but I really wanted to have defense costs built outside the limits. And so you can get dismissed from frivolous lawsuits without having an impact your overall tower of liability. It's not reduced by getting you dismissed out of this silly thing. And so we are on track now, we're entering phase 2. This is going to be this week for me and the team. And we are going to, we need to have $1 million in the bank, because we're issuing $1 million policies, and at all times, to be a valid insurance company, you have to be able to show that you can pay that whole claim. And so we need to find that here in phase 2, but we do think that we have some folks that, again, are willing to support. And then we're, again, specific and measurable timeline. We hope to have this available by the first quarter of 26. So coming soon. And I do want to say, I'm also out there as an attorney and as a consultant and whatever else in these spaces, and helping healing centers get up and running. And I've seen the premiums that people are getting asked to pay. And for spurious coverage sometimes at best. And so these numbers, no matter how they end up coming out, are going to be substantially less than what is out there in the commercial insurance marketplace right now. So hopefully it's a keystone. I can almost promise we have this report back, and now we've got to look at the numbers, but it's really all but done. We just need some funding. So
you heard it here first. Collaborants 2025. Yeah. Matt's committing to insurance.
I'm committing to engaging in phase 2, and I'm committing to, just for the sake, thank you.
If you would like to contribute to Matt's $1 million fund, he has a seat in the back, and I'm sure he would love to take that. Martha, I have a question for you.
Yes.
As I've gotten to know you, I've seen your advocacy and community building across the space, and it's wonderful. And so much of that has led us to where we are now, where we have real world sessions happening at the Center of Origin, at healing centers all across the country, a bunch in Oregon as well. Seeing you make the move into the research space, looking at real world evidence, warmed my heart. And I would love to ask you, why is it important for us to learn from what's going on in the real world, and what are we going to get from that?
So much research that's happened in psychedelics. There are hundreds of studies showing what we all know, which is that psilocybin is safe and effective. But a research study is really, like a clinical research study, is very tightly defined with the people that can be included in these studies, very tightly defined in how people are engaging with the researchers. And these clinical studies in Colorado, you don't need a diagnosis to seek psilocybin treatment. And there can be profound healing and expansion that happens even without a diagnosis. Being able to get a sense of all of these different practitioners who've been through all of these different training programs, and they're bringing a diverse set of personal experiences. This is treating clients that come in with a diverse background of life experiences, of spiritual backgrounds, of understanding of medicine. Being able to collect real world data is going to really inform outcomes. And so in Oregon, there is a law that mandates data collection, but that pretty much only includes adverse experiences, which means that there's either a medical event or law enforcement needs to be called. As far as I know, I believe out of the 14,000 sessions, there have been 7 adverse experiences, and that data doesn't have the context. So the open study follows, participants have an initial survey before their session, they have a survey after their session, and then they're followed for the next year. It turns out that one of those adverse events happened to complete the open survey. And they said while they were embarrassed about their actions, it was one of the most transformative events of their life. And so when that adverse event, that data point, without the greater context, that adverse event followed throughout the year, turned out to be a really positive treatment. And it gives a much richer context for everything that's going on.
Just real quickly, if you are in league with any investors and you have any sense of, no, truly, but in a notoriously profitable industry, right? Insurance. And then you have numbers like that, over 14,000 facilitated sessions with 7 adverse events. That is a very low loss ratio for any insurance company. And so you can do good and maybe get a little well.
That's awesome. And at Althea, we're very excited to figure out how to enable this type of research through the access we have within the workflows of these clients. And so I think it's super important. And I also think that was a really nice segue into kind of the final question I want each of us to give an answer to. We're talking about business. Business is driven based on profits, and profits can be a dirty word all across any industry. I'm an economist, I'm an entrepreneur, I understand what business is all about, but I also understand psychedelic healing, and I would love all of us to opine on what is one sort of line from an integrity standpoint you think that we cannot cross it as an industry to maintain the integrity of psychedelic healing. And each of you can answer that, and then we will.
I think you said the word that we need to really feel into, and that is integrity. Oh, but first of all, we were talking about I have to say this first, because we were talking about all the hats that we wear, and I shared some of the things that I do, on the for-profit side. I forgot to mention the actual hat I'm wearing, which is co-founder of Colorado Psychedelic Society. So many hats that I forget the hats. And Matt, since you have so many hats, I'm going to start a hat brand called Matt's Hats. Is that okay? You're too busy to do that. So I think what we need to do is keep having open conversations. We need to really remember the medicine. We need to feel into the medicine and the healing. I mean, it's very hard to say, like, what's one line we can't cross because, anyone here is not going to cross the line because we're coming into this with integrity. So we need to keep communicating. We need to keep working in community. We need to keep having events like this. We need to keep connecting with one another. We need to recognize that there are external forces, external frameworks that aren't always in alignment with the medicine and our integrity. So it's kind of hard to say like what's a line we can't cross, but we have to just keep stay true to ourselves. And it all starts with our own personal healing journey, our why. And then if we operate from that place, then we won't cross a line that shouldn't be crossed.
Initially, I was thinking about the safety screening protocols, and that's something that we should never give up because sometimes there's, shades of gray there and it would be easy to overlook them, but to do a deeper dive and to look into somebody, how they might be both suffering and then what's their current situation so that we can work within that. Then I started thinking, is it, maybe for the center origin or me personally, probably going down a synthetic route would be a line I wouldn't want to cross. Having a plant-based medicine that does everything and more than what we need. Why engage in synthetics? So for me, that would be a real breach of our own principles and mission and vision. And that's going to come soon. We were just talking about that it's already happening. So anyway, holding fast to the medicine would be my vote.
I'm going to echo the way I started this talk, talking about the Colorado law, where we have both the personal use and the therapeutic model. And the right to personal use, I think, absolutely must be protected. We should, in Colorado, we have both inbounds and backcountry skiing. You can, and in mushrooms, it's the same thing, right? Like we would never, you can pay to recreate in the mountains, and it is your right to recreate in the mountains is legally protected. People should be able to relate to these medicines in whichever way they choose. So that I think is really hard line for me.
Oh, yeah, I love it. For me, I think it's hard to kind of name a line, right? But I think that the moment that we move away from all of the, almost everyone I talk to in this space is really coming from a heart-centered place. They are really living the lessons learned from using these medicines, from really just enabling themselves to find their true power, which all of us are infinite, by the way. And so to really move beyond allowing that to fuel our work, just for the sake of some profits over here, to maybe the exclusion of some people, anything like that just seems like just a step too far for me, so losing track of the lessons that we've all learned in these medicine spaces and losing track of our heart's guidance. And so I think that would be a line for me.
What a wonderful last word. Can we get a round of applause to our panelists here? Well, thank you so much. That was the last panel of the day. We're going to have a beautiful closing ceremony coming up and then a raffle, so be sure to stick around and we'll finish out the Collaborate strong. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. If you liked it, please like and subscribe to Cheshire Corners. Tell me what you think in the comments. And as always, don't get psyched out.